Most folks build a dock for one reason: peace. To sit by the water, fish in the quiet, or just watch the sun set over the lake. That's all I wanted when I restored the old wooden dock behind my cabin. It wasn't big, it wasn't fancy, and every nail was hammered in by my own hands. For me, it was more than wooden planks. It was my escape. But if you've ever lived near an HOA, you know that peace doesn't last long. The morning it all started, I was sitting on that dock with a cup of coffee when I saw Karen marching down the shoreline. Clipboard in hand, sunglasses perched on her nose, she looked like a general ready for war. And in her world, my dock was the battlefield. She didn't bother with a hello. "This structure is unauthorized," she barked. "HOA can't just build a dock without HOA approval. It violates at least 6 of our regulations." I set my coffee down and calmly replied, "Karen, this dock isn't part of your HOA. My property isn't under your jurisdiction. I've got county permits and the state water authority signed off on it." That didn't faze her. She whipped out her phone, snapped a dozen photos, and announced, "I'll be filing an official complaint. That dock is coming down one way or another." Now here's the thing Karen didn't know. My day job? I wasn't just some lakeside homeowner. I was the regional harbor compliance inspector, the guy who approves, oversees, and, when necessary, shuts down every marina and dock operation in the county. I had more authority on that shoreline than Karen could dream of. So while she spent the next 2 hours calling every HOA contact she could, bragging about how she'd finally caught me breaking the rules, I was on the phone too, just not with her. I was scheduling a surprise inspection at the biggest marina on the lake, the one owned and operated by none other than Karen herself. And by the time those 2 hours were up, she wasn't just dealing with my dock. She was about to lose her entire marina. Karen strutted back up the shoreline like she had already won, no doubt imagining the HOA tearing my dock apart board by board. She had no idea her empire was about to crumble. Meanwhile, I grabbed my inspection kit, tossed it in the truck, and headed straight for Karen's pride and joy, Shady Pines Marina. The place looked fine from the outside, rows of slips, a fuel dock, even a little bait shop, but I knew better. I'd been getting quiet complaints about that marina for months. Leaking fuel tanks, unsafe wiring on the docks, and rumors that Karen had been renting slips without reporting income. When I pulled into the parking lot, Karen was already there, waving her arms and bragging to a couple of her board members about the illegal dock down the way. She froze the second she saw me step out of the truck with my official badge clipped to my chest. "What are you doing here?" she demanded, her voice shrill. "Routine compliance inspection," I said evenly. "Marinas in this district are required to be checked, and lucky for you, today's the day." Her face turned red. "This is harassment. You can't just—" "Karen," I cut her off. "I can, and I will. If your marina is compliant, you've got nothing to worry about." That shut her up, but only for a second. She followed me down the dock, muttering under her breath as I began the inspection. It didn't take long for problems to jump out. First, the fuel dock. The hoses were cracked and leaking into the water, a clear environmental violation. Then the electrical boxes along the piers, rusted, corroded, and wide open, wires exposed where kids and fishermen walked daily. I took photos, made notes, and marked every violation. Karen grew more frantic with each click of the camera. "This is ridiculous. Those wires are fine. It's just cosmetic. Everyone runs fuel like this. Nobody cares." I looked her dead in the eye. State law cares, federal law cares, and the people who dock here definitely care. By the time I reached the office shack, I had already logged over a dozen violations, enough to suspend her marina's license on the spot. And when I opened her files, the real kicker showed up. Karen had been charging premium rates for slips without filing a single report to the county tax office. That wasn't just negligence. That was fraud. Her voice cracked as she tried to argue. You can't do this. You're just mad about the dock." I held up the file. "Karen, this has nothing to do with my dock. This is about your marina. And right now it's one major hazard away from being shut down permanently." She turned pale. For once she wasn't yelling. She knew what was coming, and she couldn't stop it. By the time I finished logging the paperwork, Karen was practically vibrating with rage. Her clipboard shook in her hands as she tried to spin the narrative to the few slip owners who had gathered around. "Don't listen to him," she shouted. This is retaliation. He's abusing his power because I caught him building an illegal dock. He's trying to destroy our community. A fisherman leaned on his rod, squinting at her. Karen, I nearly got shocked last week plugging my boat in. The wires were sparking. You never fixed it. Another woman chimed in. And what about the fuel spill last month? My kids swam in that water. Karen's voice cracked. Those are lies. You all know I keep this marina running better than anyone. Karen, I interrupted firmly, you've had years to maintain this place. Instead, you cut corners, pocketed cash, and ignored safety laws. This isn't my opinion, it's fact. And it ends today. I pulled the official red notice from my folder, stamped with the state seal. It was an immediate suspension order, effective the moment I posted it. Karen's eyes widened as I walked up to the Marina office door and pinned it there with a heavy strip of tape. The bright red sheet fluttered in the breeze like a warning flag. You can't just shut me down, she screamed, lunging forward. I held my ground. Karen, I'm not shutting you down. The state is. This marina is unsafe, unlicensed, and under investigation. From this moment, you are not legally allowed to operate. The crowd gasped. A few slip owners started pulling out their phones, snapping pictures of the notice. Within minutes, the news would spread across the lake. Karen's voice broke into a pleading whine. Please, do you know what this will cost me? I have investments, obligations. This marina is my life. I looked her dead in the eye. Then you should have thought of that before you reported a legal dock while ignoring your own violations. Actions have consequences, Karen. Her shoulders slumped, but the fight wasn't gone yet. She scrambled for her last card. I'll appeal this. I'll call the HOA board. I'll get lawyers. You'll regret this. Go ahead, I replied, calmly. Every lawyer you hire is going to see the same violations, the same evidence, the same fraud. And when the investigators dig into your unreported income, you won't just lose this marina. You could lose everything. Karen staggered back like the words hit her harder than a punch. For the first time since I'd met her, she had nothing left to say. The queen of the HOA silenced on her own dock, and as I turned to leave, the irony struck me. 2 hours ago, she tried to tear down my dock. Now she was standing on hers, watching it sink under the weight of her own corruption. The following morning, the news had already spread like wildfire. By sunrise, every boat owner on the lake knew about the bright red notice hanging on Karen's marina office. Some were furious, others relieved, but all of them were demanding answers. I sat on my porch with a cup of coffee, watching from a distance as trucks and trailers pulled up to haul boats away from Karen's slips. People weren't waiting for an appeal or a second chance. They were done. They had seen enough of her negligence and lies. By noon, Karen's so-called empire was a ghost town. The bait shop was locked, the fuel pumps taped off, and the docks empty. The only sound was the flapping of that red violation notice in the wind, still taped to her office door like a scarlet letter. The county inspector called me that afternoon. Your report was airtight, he said. Between the environmental violations, the wiring hazards, and the financial fraud, there's no chance she'll reopen anytime soon. She'll be tied up in hearings for months. Honestly, you might have just saved lives by shutting her down. I thanked him, but I couldn't help smiling at the irony. Karen had tried to weaponize the system against me, and instead the system turned on her. Later that week, I walked down to my dock, the same dock she tried to get destroyed. It stood solid and sturdy, built to code, weathering the waves just fine. A couple of neighbors stopped by, shaking my hand. You know, one of them said, we always thought Karen was untouchable. She ran the HOA like a dictator. But you stood up to her, and you won. I shrugged. It wasn't about winning. It was about doing what's right. The law doesn't play favorites. Not for me, and not for her. Meanwhile, Karen had gone silent. No more threats, no more screaming from across the lake. Word was she was drowning in legal fees and facing fines that would bankrupt her HOA and her so-called allies on the board. They had started to distance themselves, pretending they never backed her in the first place. In the end, Karen didn't just lose her marina, she lost her grip on the entire neighborhood. Without her power, the HOA started to crumble. Residents began speaking up, demanding fair treatment and real accountability. The fear that once silenced them was gone. As for me, I finally got what I wanted all along: peace. The lake returned to being a place of quiet mornings, gentle waves, and the sound of loons calling at dusk. My dock remained exactly where it was, stronger than ever, while Karen's Marina sat empty, a monument to arrogance and greed. She thought she could sink me. Instead, she sank herself, and that's the lesson Karen never understood. When you play games with power, eventually, the tide turns. Karen tried to take down my dock, but instead, she lost her entire Marina. Justice doesn't get sweeter than that. If you loved watching Karen's downfall, hit that like button to let YouTube know you want more HOA karma stories. Tell me in the comments, what would you have done if Karen tried to report your dock? I'll feature the best replies in the next video. And don't forget, subscribe to HOA Karen Stories and smash the E, because trust me, the next Karen meltdown, it's even wilder than this one. You don't want to miss it.